I'd like to call to order this June 1st workshop of the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors. We're continuing tonight with our remote meetings. Joining us for the meeting tonight on my left is Mrs. Carmack, District 5 Supervisor. To my right, Mr. Mike Byerly, District 3 Supervisor. Joining us again from the conference room here in the Village Building is our District 4 Supervisor, Mr. Bill Cox. Mr. Larry Norvik can't be with us tonight. He's out of state. He unfortunately had a loss in his family. So our condolences go out to him and his family this evening. Brett, would you go through the ways that people can join us for the meeting tonight?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. As we have for a few meetings now, we're broadcasting on Zoom and YouTube. We published links that people can use to access those. If they're on the Zoom app, when the time comes during public comment or during the public hearings, hit the raise hand icon or say something in the chat. And if you're on the phone, hit, let's see, you would check if it's *6 or *9, *9 to be recognized. And then just a reminder, Mr. Chairman, before we get into the meeting, we do need to adopt Ordinance 2020-06 to allow us to continue remote meeting procedures since the previous ordinance expired yesterday.
Okay. So we'll change the order of presentation on the agenda. Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Chardon?
Yeah, so what you would do is just, I think, add a 1C, adoption of Ordinance 2020-06, have the board vote to adopt that, and then we can proceed as normal, and we'll have the public hearing.
You have it on the agenda for 8A for public hearing.
Yeah, that's the public hearing for it, so we'll still hold that as planned at that time. Just what you need to do at this point is make a motion to adopt 2020-06.
Motion to adopt 2020-06.
Do you want me to make the motion right now and then we have, should I do that?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Carmack, please.
I move we adopt 2020-06.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, it's an ordinance, so we need a roll call.
We need the roll call, correct?
Yep.
Ms. Chardon, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Byerly?
Aye.
Mr. Cox?
Aye.
Mrs. Carmack?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye. And let me apologize to people that are watching the meeting tonight. I failed to introduce our interim county administrator, Mr. Brett Chardon, at the beginning of the meeting, and also joining us remotely is Mr. Tom Latchney, the county attorney. So again, my apologies, gentlemen. Brett, have you finished with your instructions on calling in this evening?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I'll ask Mrs. Carmack to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Byerly, would you do the invocation, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, as we're gathered here this evening to do the work of the citizens of Powhatan County, please give us guidance, give us the ability to communicate, for everyone to understand what our message is. Watch over us as we go through these challenging times with what's happening in our country, with the virus, with the sad death of an individual in Minneapolis. We ask that you guide us and continue to give us good direction to take care of the county's business. Amen.
Amen.
Do you have any requests to postpone agenda items and additions, deletions, or changes in the order presentations? Not hearing any, do I have a motion for formal approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
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 That takes us to our first public comment period. Please give your name and your address. If you're an individual, we will give you 3 minutes. If you represent a group, we will give you 5 minutes. Brett, will you help me out?
Yes, sir. A reminder, everybody, again, if you're on the phone, *9. If you are participating with us through Zoom, hit the raise hand button and we'll recognize you to speak.
Do we have anybody wishing to join us this evening?
I'm not seeing anyone.
I will close the first public comment period. I'll move to old business, authorization to advertise the FY21 county budget. Mr. Chardon.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So as we've modified our budget adoption schedule to move it to June 29th to allow the board as much time as possible to deliberate and hear from the community before adopting, we would need to advertise a budget to hold the required public hearing. So we're just asking the board's authorization to advertise. What we have put together would be a budget at the 88-cent tax rate, which is what we had advertised for the tax rate public hearing, assuming a collection rate of around 94%. So again, as we did with the tax rate and the school board budget, this would be something that would be essentially a not to exceed amount. The board can adopt anything lower than that. So we'll have over the coming weeks more opportunity to gather information, see what the current collections for sales tax, personal property, real estate tax continue to look like, and make our best decisions for the fiscal year 21 budget. So happy to answer any questions. This is what we're recommending we advertise as a starting point.
Any questions for Mr. Chardon?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Carmack.
Brett, quick question. I understand this is what is being put out there as a starting point. Is the final budget that we adopt on June 29th, will that be in the paper and advertised as kind of a final budget, or is this it?
Yeah, so we would advertise it in the paper. It's, I think, one of the larger, if not the largest legal ad that we put out. So it's not like our usual land use case public hearings. It's a pretty significant ad that we take out that includes the specifics.
So is that, we'll do that this time, and then when we adopt the final one, so it'll be twice? So like after, like July 8th, is there going to be the final budget that we adopt? That's what I'm wondering.
I don't believe so. I think we only advertise this, and then so long as you adopted this or something lesser, then we would not re-advertise. If you decided to go over, we would have to re-advertise before even adopting. But once we adopt it, I don't think it gets re-advertised.
Okay, thank you.
I think what you're getting at, Mrs. Carmack, is you want to be able to show people that what was advertised actually what didn't get adopted.
Exactly, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, Ms. Chardon, what I would recommend to staff is to, after adoption, to post the budget again, what is adopted, on our Facebook page and also on the county website, which we do always anyway.
Yep. And Powhatan today, I believe, will usually do a follow-up article on what was adopted regarding budget and tax rate and all of that. So we'll work closely with Laura as well to make sure it gets shared that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chardon. Do I have a motion to authorize the advertisement of the FY21 county budget?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Cox.
I'd like to make a motion that we advertise the FY 2021 county operating budget as Mr. Chardon has presented it.
Do I have a second on the motion tonight? I will second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move to 7B, ordinance 0-2020-07, an emergency ordinance amending chapter 80, water, wastewater, article 3, fees and charges, section 8078 of the Code of Powhatan. Brett, would you just briefly overview why we're doing this?
Yep, so this is the one that the board held the public hearing on previously and adopted previously, but as was pointed out, I believe at the last meeting, we had some language in there about the 60-day readoption, which would essentially require us to come back every 60 days to readopt. So this version in front of you would have that removed. So it would leave this as an option in the ordinance indefinitely. It would only be used when the board wants it in place for an emergency. So it's not constantly in effect, but it would be always available to the board as an option. So we're just essentially correcting what was in your packet last time.
Any questions from Ms. Chardon? Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 0-2020-07? I will make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Tom, does this cover a call?
Yeah.
A roll call?
Still an ordinance, so yeah, still needs a roll call.
Okay. Brett, call the roll, please.
All right, Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Mr. Cox,
Aye.
Mrs. Carmack,
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
All right. This brings us to our second public hearing. No, this is not, no, excuse me, this is a public hearing on the readoption of ordinance 0-2020-06 on emergency continuity of operations ordinance pursuant to Virginia Code 15-2-14-13. Brett, would you briefly explain what's going on?
Yep, so this is the ordinance that allows the board to modify their meeting procedures to do things like hold remote meetings. So what you had adopted earlier in the meeting, we're just required to hold a public hearing on it afterwards. So that's what we're doing here now.
Okay. Any discussion? If there's not any discussion, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Brett, let me know if somebody wishes to join us.
Okay, will do. I don't see anybody yet, but we'll give it a second. Not seeing anyone, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion? Ms. Carmack,
So moved.
you move for the readoption of ordinance 0-2020-06. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I will second your motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Please, Mr. Wiley.
Haven't we already made a motion on this and approved this at the beginning?
Yeah, we just didn't have the public hearing on it.
So we had to do it again after the public hearing?
We had to hold a public hearing on it.
I mean, we have to have a motion again on the same,
We passed it without a public hearing, is my understanding. Is that correct, Brett?
You technically passed it the first time tonight under the state provisions of an emergency ordinance. Now you're adopting it the second time as a non-emergency ordinance. Before, the first time we adopted, we'd had no public hearing, so it was only temporary. Now that we've had a public hearing, adopting it a second time, we'll take it out of the temporary into the permanent. Does that make sense?
as in 60 days is the last one?
The
Or did,
one we did a few minutes ago would only be good for 60 days.
okay,
This one now will be good indefinitely. Well, 6 months, that's the maximum because of the enabling legislation. But the second one takes us beyond the 60 days because now that we've had a public hearing, it's not an emergency adoption anymore.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. Okay. We've had a motion and a second. We've had discussion, a question, explanation by Mr. Chardon. Ms. Chardon, would you call the roll?
It's Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Mr. Cox,
Aye.
Mrs. Carmack,
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
All right. That will take us to our second public comment period. Please come forward, giving your name, your address. If you're an individual, we will give you 3 minutes. If you represent a group, we will give you 5 minutes. Brett?
Yeah,
Let
we
me
did
know
have,
if they wish to join us.
yeah, anybody wishing to speak, just raise your hand or put something in the chat. I see Jim Carver, he submitted a comment to us, so I think he looks like he would like me to read that in. Jim Carver, 4245 Steger Creek Drive, Powhatan, Virginia, 23139. Public thanks to Mr. Wood, the IT staff, and everyone else for making it possible to participate in these meetings remotely. Additionally, the county website upgrades look great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Any others, Brett?
I do not see anybody else.
And I will close the second public hearing. Do I have county attorney comments?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
County administrator comments, Mr. Chardon?
No comments this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Board comments?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Then I will adjourn the meeting tonight. Thank you.
That might be quickest one on record.
It is, it's got